Hello, everyone. Welcome to another amazing episode 52 Authors, 52 Weeks, with me, your host, Dr. Lisa L. Campbell, the Growth Motivator. Today, I am joined by Adinah Johnson, who is the author of Butterfly Blue. And I have to pause and I want to give a disclaimer. Um, it's Butterfly Blue, but it's the pain of infertility and the power of forgiveness. Hi, Adina.
Hi,
How are you today?
I'm doing amazing. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here. I'm so excited to delve into this topic. And before we started recording, I think I had mentioned to you that for a long time, I said, and I realized it was selfish of me to say that I never wanted to be never wanted to have children. But after considering Butterfly Blue and the journey, I realized that I'm going to now start saying I never saw myself as being someone's mother. And she's 32 today, but she does not speak. She cannot hear. Mentally, she's about, I don't know, somewhere between 5 and 10. And I know God gave her to me because he knew I could care for her. So thank you for helping me change my message as it relates to kids, because I realize that there are so many women who their heart's desire is to have kids and they're unable to do so. So before we get into the book, and everybody who watches this show, you know, we're not going to tell you everything that's in the book. You got to get your own copy of the book. But tell our listening and viewing audience just about you and your background. I know you're married, and I'm just like blown away by the number, but I'll let you tell your own story.
Yes, I'm a retired psychology professor. I just retired after 20 years in the classroom. Last year, 2023, I worked from 2003 to 2023. I've been a marriage coach with my husband since 2001. So we've been marriage coaches for a really long time. All of our stuff is on YouTube under Nick, N-I-K, and Adinah, Adinah, on YouTube. Now I am, after retiring, I became a podcaster. So I have a podcast with my friend of over 45 years. We've been friends since I was six and she was 5. So we have a podcast. And what we do is we add in a bit of pop culture along with research, because I bring in research from my time in the classroom. So what we do on our podcast is just encourage the younger generation, younger women to live life to the fullest, because those years go by fast and life is too short to be miserable. So yeah, I have been with my husband 27 years, married 24. We just celebrated 24 years. And I wrote this book. And I know you said we're going to get into the book. I wrote this book because, like you, for the longest time, I was a youth counselor for 14 years. So I kept saying I never wanted children. And that was not my story. We actually, had a child really early on. So we'll get into that, I'm sure.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that little tidbit. So in the classroom for 20 years, at the college level, I'm sure that you had more kids than you actually gave birth to, because I know for me, from teaching for the last 25 years, there have been some, not that they became my kids, but I wound up mentoring them because they didn't have a mentor in their family or at home. So even though I didn't give birth, but to just one child, I think I've helped nurture a lot of individuals in my classroom setting. But congratulations on the retirement. When you said retirement, I'm sitting here thinking, I'm 51 and I have no plans on retiring. My grandfather is 103. My grandparents were married for 78 years. Can you imagine 78 years until she died? He's still here today. Granddaddy loves the ladies. He loves the ladies. Yes, he will tell you the ladies love him too. But when I think about um, how he makes that comment, that just lets me know that he just enjoys living life, right? And I think that's so important. You mentioned not being miserable, and I think there's so many people who are not even self-aware that they are miserable. So tell us why you decided to write Butterfly Blue. I love the title, by the way.
Thank you. I decided to write my book because for everything that I went through during the process, and I recall myself telling individuals as I was writing, and it was so crazy because I kept thinking, and it was something that just came out constantly when I met people. I'm writing a book. I'm writing a book. And the last time I said that, I physically got ill and said, I am not going to ever say that again. I went home and literally wrote all night for the next months. And prior to that, my editor kept saying, write just 30 minutes a day. And I talked to other authors and they were like, butt in chair, write, write, write. And after I said that, that was my motivation to get it done and to come out with a finished product. I just feel like we have to share what we go through so other people, so we can connect to other people. Because as I was going through my process and my fertility journey, I realized a lot of other people had gone through miscarriages, people that I've known all my life, and they never talked about it. So I think it's important to talk about these things.
So I know you know, as a psychology professor for all those years, so many of us are afraid to share what we've been through. And I think that's selfish because you lived to be able to tell others what you've gone through. So, little by little, share it. And for me, sharing my own journey set me free.
Mhm.
Things that I didn't even realize I was holding on to, I was letting go when I was writing. And a lot of people say, well, I'm not a good writer. So let me just drop this tip here. Yours truly opened up Zoom initially, hit record, and just started talking, crying, screaming. And the words just started to flow. And then after probably the first 3 chapters of me and I didn't have the camera on so I could see myself, right? I just had it on, probably was sitting in my PJs and I was just saying the words. Then I got a little fancy and I opened up Microsoft Word. It got a little microphone button. And sometimes I'm in the tub crying again. I love crying because I'm shedding all of these things like that have been holding me back. But I frequently am in the tub. I open up my iPad, click on Microsoft Word, and just talk, and it transcribes. And I realized that I had to be focused on my message and not all the mess. And in the process, it set me free,
Mhm.
which allowed me to show the world this version of Lisa L. Campbell today, that she was inside, but she needed to peel back the layers and not be afraid to say, shortly after I had my special needs daughter, I decided I didn't want to be here anymore. Right.
Yeah.
So I think sharing helps others get through their stuff, and we all got stuff. And I don't know where there's this stigma about, if I tell somebody I took 30 Tylenol, they're going to think less of me, right? People just, if I go to a therapist, they're going to think less of me, right? I think we have all of these myths about things that we don't want to do. And some of it, I think, is generational, where you were taught, keep the stuff in the household, don't tell anybody. Well, the folks in the household were experiencing it too. They traumatized by it. So you need to share it outside of the space so you can let it go. So I want to, again, we're not going to tell them all about the book, but talk to us about, you didn't want to be a mother. That's our new terminology. You didn't want to be a mother, but your husband did. Talk to us about that.
Well, when we got together, he didn't want to be a dad either. a little bit about the book. I know you said we're not going to talk a lot about it, but when my husband and I met 3 weeks after we got together, we drove a young lady to the hospital to give birth to a little boy. And so he was born on Christmas Day, and we were just dating. We were newly together, and we realized the young lady couldn't raise the little boy. So it just broke my heart, and I just continued to try to help her raise him, and it just wasn't working. It was like putting a round shape into a square peg. It just was not fitting. And when the little boy was 4 months old, I walked into her apartment and he was there alone. And so that's when I realized, okay, something has to happen. And it really was mentally affecting me that this kid was out there by himself. So we ended up adopting this little boy prior to getting married. And so that was the thing. I was dating my husband, even though he was there when the little boy was born. He asked me, he said, well, I asked him, I said, should I adopt him? And he says, well, I'm a boyfriend right now. It's your choice. So I ended up adopting him. And when we got married, it was a merger of contracts. He became a dad, just like I, became a mom when I adopted him. So he was in the child's life. Right now, that child is 27. So that was 27 years ago. But so we were already parents. And so that's when he said, I think I want legacy. I think I want to have biological children. And at that point, we had been married for 8 years together, 12. So I was like, oh my God, where's my husband? What'd you do with him? Because I told him, I said, if you change your mind, let me know before I turn 35. I was 4 months from my 36th birthday. So I thought that time had passed. So that's how that came about. He changed his mind.
Interesting. Well, I will tell you, my husband and I have been married for 12 years this year. I brought my daughter to the marriage. He brought his 3 children, my bonus children, to the marriage. And we both said, listen here, we done. We are done with this part of our lives. And I think for me, I spent all of my adult life raising this special needs daughter alone. And my husband and I actually dated in high school. So when we reconnected in 2008, he says repeatedly, I should have been Jasmine's father. But he takes care of her just like, she's his own. I believe that she thinks that he's her father because that's all she knows, right? So, so a few months before your 36th birthday. So now everybody's probably wondering why she said we're not going to talk about the book. We are going to talk about the book, but we're not going to be telling you what everything is in the book because then you won't purchase your own copy. You say, I got my copy. You need to get your own copy so that you can experience it for yourself. I will tell you that as a person who has loved to read since I was a kid, every time I open a book and I turn from one page to the next, I'm either crying, learning, reflecting, thinking about, oh, I didn't know this. I need to tell such and such this. I happen to know a physician in Atlanta that's an infertility specialist. And so I think that there are so many messages in the book, and I can't wait to see the other books that are born after this book. To me, once you write the first one, it seems like the second one is harder because you try to be like, you got this expectation of how it's going to do and be. And I'm going to tell you about me. I took out that Microsoft Word, clicked on that button, and just started talking again for my next book. Because I was just like, if I don't get it out of my head, I feel like I'm going to regret who I could have been helping with the story, right? And so it's selfish for me to keep the story inside of me. I got to get it out.
Absolutely.
So tell us a little bit about the pain of infertility.
Well, and we talk about, and I know you were saying that your husband and you, 12 years. So you were in, close to your 40s, in your 40s when you got together. My husband and I, when we met, he was 21, I was 24. So, we had all those years to change and decide, oh, wow, we've been married for 10 years. We actually announced at our 10-year wedding anniversary party that we were pregnant with our first biological child. And so that child now is 10. And then we had another one, my daughter, and I'm sorry, my son is 13 and my daughter's 10. So I just felt like, yeah, I just felt like, we thought we were so young and naive. We thought, oh, you do what married folks do and you get pregnant. We saw everybody around us getting pregnant during that time, in their 20s. And then at that point, we were, in our 30s. And that didn't quite happen. After a year, your doctor starts saying, hey, you need to come in and see me. That's the first thing you do. You go to the doctor and get off the pill and, consult with them and see what needs to happen. And they're like, let's just see what happens, when you do get off the pill and, go so on and so forth. And it just didn't happen right away.
Wow, wow. I have a friend, well, former friend, who I say former friend, that's another story for another day. But she was in her 40s, had 4 children, about 3 grandchildren. All of the children were adults. They had grandchildren. She married someone who was a few years younger than her, over 40, and he's like, I want a baby. And so her journey with infertility was one that was, and I kind of watched her go through it, very emotional, very costly. I remember when I was a younger medical assistant, I was working I was kind of like rotating from different clinics. And I remember working at an infertility clinic, and I will never forget, I come out of the exam room and this physician that I knew walked in and was coming to um, donate his sperm, right? So I was in shock because I didn't know. And I worked with him at this other place, right? And so his wife was in the waiting room. And after that, I was like, I'm not working at this clinic anymore because I don't want to see anybody else I know, because I felt bad for them. I didn't know what to say. Like, what do you say?
He was donating his sperm, or was he just trying to get it tested?
Get it tested. I didn't mean to say donate. He was getting
Oh,
it
okay.
tested. Yeah. Sorry. Using the wrong terminology. Yeah, he was
I'm
getting
like, do tell, what happened?
no, he was getting it tested. So I didn't know what to say to him. I said hi, obviously, but after that, I was like, I cannot work in this clinic anymore. I don't
Yeah.
want to see anybody else I know, because I know that that's an emotional period in one's life, and I just couldn't do it.
Yeah, it's a really early process. The clinics open up about 6. They're testing sperm. They're doing IUIs in insemination, which is the first step, which is an IUI, where they just insert the clean, washed sperm into the uterus. And it's a painful process trying to see if you're going to get pregnant once your eggs have fertilized, and then they do the IVF. So yeah, no one talks about it because everybody's there for the same reason, and everybody's just really quiet. Nobody is saying anything, and everybody's just kind of sitting there, kind of a somber situation. And nobody talks. It's early in the morning. Nobody, wants to say anything to anybody else because we're all going through the same thing. So yeah, it's a pretty serious process. It's difficult. And as you go along spending all this money and things aren't happening, it's like, what's wrong with me? So psychologically, it can do a lot of damage on a person. It can damage the relationship. Luckily, we were both marriage coaches, and we vowed that our relationship would remain strong during the process.
Wow, you just shared a couple of key areas. So as you can tell, I'm kind of a very energetic, bouncy person, right? So I was used to going to clinics, being really involved with patients, and that setting was totally opposite. I had to tone down Lisa, but after seeing him, I was just like, this is not the right place for me to work, because of my personality, and so I didn't work there anymore. But I can't even begin to imagine the emotional toll that it takes on you as a woman, but as well as relationships. And I know, as a marriage coach, Marriage it's a job all by itself.
Yeah.
And you either in or you out. And it's
Yeah.
something you working on daily, second by second. Even when you like, I don't like you today because I told you to take that garbage out. But it's something that if you believe in love and you love each other and you want to do it for the long haul, um, I I know I'm unless I live to be over 100, I don't think I'm gonna make the 78-year time frame that my grandparents did. But they were in a different time, right? Things were different. They had 6 kids. My grandfather went to the war, so things were different. So in the book, and I'm sorry, I am having one of those lovely private summers. So in the book, you talk about forgiveness. Tell us about why forgiveness is so powerful.
Well, forgiveness was extremely powerful. And as you go through, a lot of people say, who did you have to forgive? Did you have to forgive yourself? No, I had to forgive my father for making my mom a single mom. My dad was very young when my mom gave birth to me, and I was his only child. So it was very difficult because I felt like I felt abandonment issues. And so I really had to forgive him because he didn't have it to give as far as being a parent, you know. And then I went to the place where I wanted to be a parent. And of course, in my wisdom, in my late 30s, I'm like, well, I'm going to be an amazing parent. And how dare you not be a parent at, 18 when my parents had me. So I just really had to go through the process to forgive my father. And I realized that forgiveness is a process. It's not linear. It doesn't just happen. Or you can go, like you were talking about with marriage, you can go through the process to forgive someone. And then you have to remind yourself that you forgave that person when they say something that triggers you. So that is where I had to go as far as with my dad. And toward, the end, he became my best friend. We talked constantly and we just really dealt with a lot of those issues that we had that way. And he apologized to me. I felt like at one point I needed him to apologize to me. And when he did it, it was empty. It didn't matter. I had to realize that forgiveness was a personal act. It wasn't for him, it was for me. And so I felt like I couldn't be a good parent until I forgave my dad for abandoning me as a child.
Wow. So something you said really resonated with me because two things. Number one, these children and the grandchildren do not come with the user's manual, right? So I read what to expect when you're expecting, but that baby Jasmine that I gave birth to, I had to learn her just as well as she had to learn, how we navigate life together. But when you talk about the forgiveness part, something that popped into mind that I need to work on is I said for a long time that my daughter's father didn't want to be in her life. And he said, I don't know how to raise a special needs child. Well, I didn't take a class on it either. I don't have a degree in special needs children, right? I was her mother. And so even though we had some bumpy roads, I just had to figure things out. But I don't think that I've ever explored moving on for having some kind of, I don't know, feeling a certain kind of way about him not being in her life. And so I think I need to put that in my journal as something to work on because she's 32, right? So you would think a lot of times we bury all this hurt and pain and we don't realize what impact it has on our lives. I told you my husband is amazing with my daughter, right? But I definitely need to work on that situation. So thank you very much for helping me with that because I would have never, maybe would have, but it never crossed my mind that I needed to work through that situation. So this
Yeah.
is good.
Yeah, I encourage you to do that also. And I encourage you too to go through the process to forgive yourself because oftentimes when there's a special needs, we blame ourselves. Just like when I had my fertility issues, I blamed myself. I was like, my husband's not the problem. I'm the problem. I can't carry these children. I ended up with 4 miscarriages, and I talk about that in the book. So as I'm going through those miscarriages, I had to go through the process of forgiving myself as well, because I felt like my body was failing me and I couldn't do what many people find so easy to do, and that's just be a mom. So I encourage you to go through that process for forgiveness for him as well as yourself.
I love it. I love it. So you're not going to tell them everything about the book, because folks be thinking we had this 30-minute conversation and they know every takeaway from the book, and they don't. Um, what is your favorite part of the book?
My favorite part of the book, oh my
Don't
gosh,
say the end.
the end. I couldn't make it through the end without bawling. There are certain areas in the book I can't even read without the waterworks. So, and I'm not a crier. My husband, we were together 5 years before he even saw me cry. So, my favorite part of the book, oh my gosh, it was a whirlwind. There was so much going on. There were so many different areas. But I think my favorite part of the book is the end of each chapter, the takeaways that I put in there, what I learned out of the situation, and the Bible verse I added to get me through at that time. Those, were the takeaways. Also, the research that I put into the book was amazing for me, because me being a psychology professor and constantly for 20 years telling my students, cite your source, that was so helpful for me. So that was some of the things that were, very important for me in the book. And then also changing some of the names. Just thinking about the people and the names. And it's so crazy because I had some people come back and say, well, that's not what happened. Well, that's not what happened from your perspective. This is my perspective. You write your own book if you want it from your perspective. So, there were just so many different things that just resonated with me, which is why I wrote the book. So, yeah.
I love it. When my grandfather read the book, and yes, my grandfather at 100, and he was 102 when the book was published, he was like, I learned some things about you I didn't know. Like, I don't know if somebody didn't tell them, but he didn't know about the 30 Tylenol, right? I don't know why he didn't know. It could be he forgot, right? Because that was, 30 years ago. So maybe he did know, but he didn't remember. But it's funny you mentioned about changing some of the names, because I'm just gonna tell you, when I wrote my book, everybody's name that I was gonna put in the book, their name is in there. Some of them haven't even read the book, and really, it wasn't like I was telling their business. I was really telling about the impact that they had on my life and when they came into my life. And I realized that all of them collectively helped me become who I am today, even though it was different points and times and different situations. So, my next book, I will need to make up some names. Maybe one will be blue, one will be red, one will be green, and change some things around, because this book, there are some stories that need to be told to help so many people. And some people won't go to a therapist, but they'll read a book.
Yeah.
And even though I personally believe in therapy, I think you need to talk to someone that has the credentials to help you work through whatever you're going through. But if they're against that, reading and reflecting and learning is a start. To
Yeah.
me, it peels back some of the layers to help you figure out what's next. One of the things that I think that we don't talk about too often is, so we don't talk about infertility because we think something is wrong with us.
Mhm.
But my bonus children in on their side of the family, every other girl is born with a condition where they cannot have a baby. Yes, every other girl. So my husband's ex-wife, she had kids. And so then she has 3 daughters. One of them cannot have kids. And
Hmm.
it's a genetic condition that they're born with. But I like the fact that you talked about the adoption, and I'm so happy that you helped that young girl out. I wish more of us would go back to that it takes a village mentality, because you are probably the third person that I've met on this journey that has adopted a baby that was in need, and they literally know that they saved that baby's life. And that's so powerful, because we need to help save our community. Our future depends on it.
Well, my mom raised her. My mom, it's in the book, how my mom raised her and everything. And, you know, that is a tough one, because I think you'd have to listen to my podcast and hear my podcast partner walk me through some of that forgiveness for her, because there was a lot going on there. I'll just leave it at that. There's a lot going on there. There's triggers there, and that there's a lot. So yeah, my podcast partner, I was triggered by something that happened. It was so crazy. I was watching Tommy Davidson on Club Shay Shay, and he said some stuff, because he's adopted as well, and his biological mom said some stuff that flat out triggered me. And so I'm just honest about things. So I called a podcast meeting, and I allowed my podcast partner to walk me through some of the things that triggered me. And, even though you've forgiven someone or there's forgiveness, again, it's a process. And so sometimes you will get triggered. And, I think it's important for individuals to hear how seasoned ladies handle it from time to time.
I'm going to need to get that podcast link. I have a nail appointment later today, and I'm going to need to have that playing in my ear, because you can't just drop that on me and not give it to me, because I need to listen. You know what? I think a lot of us don't know when we're being triggered, because it causes us to sometimes act in a way that's out of character for us, because we've been triggered. So I would like to hear the episode, not because I'm being nosy, because I just want to hear it. And yeah. I know you said you don't really like to cry. I like to be exposed to things that allows me to shed some tears, because it really loosens me up. It's like it's like a massage to some extent for me, because I'm crying and releasing something that I didn't know needed to be released.
Yeah. I grew up with two brothers, so it was always, you're gonna cry. You're gonna cry. So no, I'm not a crier. But yeah, I will definitely send you that link, because I think it's good work. I think we have to train people in our lives to help us through those processes. You can't always go to therapy, like you were saying, but you can listen to a podcast. You can say, dang, I resonate with that. I feel that. I understand that. And you can allow people to process things with you. And that's all a good counselor does. They ask the right questions and process things with you. They will never, make a decision or say, well, what I would do is. That's not what a counselor is. That's your good girlfriend. Right. That's your mama. That's your,
yes.
That's your mother-in-law that's going to tell you what you would do. A counselor is one that will help you process. And so honestly, I got into counseling to help myself initially. And after I did all the tools, after I did everything that I was encouraging other people to do, because here's the thing, I'm the type of person, I can't just teach it out of a book. I have to process it. I have to go through things. And so that's how I originally got into counseling. At the ripe old age of 17, I knew I wanted to be a youth counselor. Wow. Did that for 14 years, burnt out from that, which is when I became a psychology professor. But that was, those are the things in the classroom I enjoyed, is helping individuals process things. My classes would just turn into counseling sessions all the time, because I needed to teach students how to, walk individuals through those things and what real counseling is about.
I love it. I love that you mentioned that everything you need to teach is not in a physical textbook. And because first of all, some of the stuff is outdated in the book, right? It does not align with how we need to navigate life today. But I said to another author that I'm learning more from reading all these books than I learned going through all these years of college. And I believe that there are so many pearls of wisdom in books that if we just take the time to read them, we will grow and evolve as people. And I'm so grateful that my father, I'm not going to say he forced us, but we went to the Chicago Public Library quite a bit as kids. Maybe it was just, keeping us out of trouble, having something to do. But I'm grateful that he imparted in us the importance of reading, because I think it's so very important to do so. This was my dream. My dream in life, I'll put this out in the atmosphere, is to continue. This is, my first year doing 52 authors, 52 weeks. I want to continue this process for years to come. But if I had my way, my bills would be paid, and I would just go on like these retreats where I can just read and chat with others who are reading the same book, and we're learning and sharing and growing together. That's my desire. That
Yeah,
is.
book clubs are so rich. That's one of the things I encourage my kids to do. I just took my daughter to a celebrity authors gala so she could meet her favorite author. And those are the things we love to do together. She's 10 now, and she was the only kid there, and she was all dressed up. I'll have to send you the pictures. But she met James Ponti, which is her favorite author. And it was just amazing for her to see it through her eyes, for her to get to talk to the authors. I met a few authors myself. John Grisham was there. And so just to listen to the authors and their process, I've always loved that. I've enjoyed that. I met a few other authors, gave them my book, of course, had them to sign the books that I've read of theirs, but it was a beautiful experience. I think your dad did an amazing job. I grew up in the public library. My kids, when we were home, when I had to homeschool them, because they didn't go to school until they went to school. That's part of why I pulled back from the classroom, is so I could teach my children, be home with my children. I thought that was important. So we did all the library programs. We just did all the programs in the library. Every summer we do the summer book start. And so I think that's important what your dad did for you. That was a gift.
You know what? It was greater than any amount of money that he could leave us when he leaves this earth, because knowledge is power. And I don't know about you, but when you have knowledge, you are powerful. Mm-hmm. And you just got to use it, right? Use it for good, not
the
use
Bible
it for...
says my people perish for lack of knowledge. And you don't necessarily have to die physically, but just mentally die within self. There's so many things that we have to go through with the death process. Even when you lose a person or when you go through a divorce, you have to go through the death process. You had to go through the death process when you gave birth to a special needs daughter, the death process, a grieving process of understanding that there are certain rites of passages she won't have. So, and part of us having that knowledge is understanding this is grief. This is what I'm going to have to go through because of this experience. So I think that's so important.
I love it. So listen, our time is up, but we cannot leave, because when this episode airs, we want to have, scrolling down the bottom of the page, all of your different sites. So first, tell us where we can find your book.
My book is on Amazon, and it's Butterfly Blue, The Pain of Infertility, The Power of Forgiveness. And if you look under Butterfly, Amazon is going to give you everything under Butterfly. So you need
I'm a witness. I am a witness. Listen, through this journey, I have ordered the wrong book. And so for an author I was meeting with, and so now I am very clear about, for me, I try to start with the name, because it's easier for me to start with the name of the author. So because you're right. I did happen to type in butterfly, and it was a lot going on in the Amazon. A lot.
Yeah, that's a problem. So just type in Adinah, Adinah Johnson, and my book will pop up. And so that's where the book is.
Okay. And how can our listening, viewing audience find you, especially for this marriage counseling?
My marriage coaching is on YouTube. My husband and I believe teach everything you know. That's one of our mottos. And so that's on YouTube under Nick, N-I-K, and Adinah, A-D-I-N-A-H. And you'll see relationship coaching with Nick and Adinah out there. And so you get to hear some of the wisdom from my amazing husband. He's a computer programmer, and he's a man of few words, but he's very well read, which is why he's my husband, because he is He's very intelligent in that space. And so he really does, he has a passion for it as well.
That's good. My husband tells me all the time that he prefers to stay behind the camera. He doesn't want anybody to hear his voice. And that's okay, right? But we have talked about a certain segment of my other show that he's going to do. And so I can't wait because I will be behind the camera as opposed to the person that's in front of the camera. So I can't wait for that.
Yeah,
I,
my husband, I'm actually the producer for his podcast. He has a podcast coming out before October of this year, Everyday Money Heroes, because he's in the financial independence space. So on that one, I'm behind the camera, I'm doing the research, and I am the one that's not involved with that one as far as in front of the camera. But yeah, he's involved with the financial independence space, which is why I was able to retire at age 50.
Wow. Wow. I love it. I'm so happy for you. I'm jealous. I'm a little jealous because and I have to be honest, I'm not ready to retire. There are so many things that I have yet to do. And
Yeah,
so, but I am in the preferment stage of my life. I only do what I prefer to do from a
there you
work
go.
perspective, just because I've been working since I was 16.
Yes.
So, I am enjoying just reading and learning. And I also am rereading some books that I read before. Because I feel like after reading it the first time, I've evolved, and now I'm in a different place, and I need to read it again just to see how I've evolved, and be like, oh, when you read it the first time, you were thinking this way, but now this is how you navigate life. And so
Mhm.
it's a journey that I'm excited about being on. I want to thank you so much for taking the time to talk a little bit about Butterfly Blue, because I really would encourage you all to purchase this book. And maybe you're thinking, I'm not suffering from infertility. You may know someone, and that's the other thing. My aunt, who is a nurse, talks about how we don't have those conversations around the dinner table, around the any table that we're in with our female friends, our families, and we need to have the conversations because there's someone suffering that needs us to help them feel supported and help them navigate and know that they're not alone.
Right. Right. Also, my podcast, Black Butterfly, Black Pearls, is with my friend of over 45 years. And that is anywhere you get your podcast.
I love it. I love it. Well, do you have any final thoughts for our listening, viewing audience?
My final thought is life is too short. It's important for you to enjoy every minute of it. And so you have to find things to do to where you enjoy. We all have to work out. So instead of just working out, I walk outside. Find those little small areas where you can just enjoy life. And whatever you set your mind to, you will be able to achieve it. You can do it. If I can do it, have my last baby at 41, you can do it too. If you want to be a better parent, tomorrow's another day. Just every day, try to do your best at everything you do.
I love that. I love it. Well, that's the perfect way to end today's segment of 52 Authors, 52 Weeks. I was just joined by Adinah Johnson, author of Butterfly Blue. Now I can't even say the word butterfly. That's because I saw it so many times on Amazon. So thank you so much for joining us today. I wish you the best of luck. This is not the end of our journey together. This is just the beginning. Next year, I'm going to be doing 52 Authors, 52 Weeks, 2024 version. Where are they now? Because I think it's important for people to see how you've continued to evolve. And, when you come back, maybe not here, but when I see you again, it's going to be the new book. It's going to be some other things that have happened after this. So I am excited about your future, even at the young age that we are today. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.